So by now most of you have probably seen the apocalyptic imagery coming out of the wildfires in Australia, which for context have already burned an area 6 times bigger than the apocalyptic wildfires that we witnessed in the Amazon rainforest this summer. Yeah, the earth is literally on fire. These fires have already taken the lives of an estimated 1 billion animals, which for context is about the number of land animals alone who have been slaughtered for human consumption just since New Year's Eve. But I don't want to talk about depressing stuff. I want to talk about what we can actually do for the animals in Australia, both in a very direct way, I mean rescuing the animals from the fires, taking care of the ones who have already been rescued, and looking at the big picture, because as everybody knows, or as everyone who's scientifically literate knows, every adult and every child, so everyone but the President of the United States, these fires are the result of climate change. Now, as far as direct rescue, there's a lot of amazing groups at work in these fires, but I want to support and I want to encourage people to support animal rescue groups who don't also support slaughtering animals. What do I mean by that? Now, I'm going to admit that I was a little bit triggered during the wildfires in the Amazon to see all these so-called environmental groups asking for money. Everybody give us money, give us money, give us money to deal with the fires. While these very same groups were completely ignoring the #1 cause of the Amazon fires, 91% of which was for animal consumption. And not only that, these groups are massive hypocrites with the money that people give to them. Because, just to give you an example, a company named WeWork, which is not an environmental NGO, it is an office supply company, announced a policy of they're not going to be serving animal flesh on premises, they're not going to be reimbursing employees for meals that include animal flesh in order to deal with the climate emergency, in order to reduce their environmental footprint. And yet the World Wildlife Fund, Greenpeace, and a long list of so-called environmental groups doesn't have such a policy, which is ridiculous. So they're directly supporting animal cruelty, slaughtering animals, even though they call themselves World Wildlife Fund, and they're doing a horrible job at raising awareness at the #1 cause of habitat destruction. So in Australia, I did some research and I found an animal sanctuary that is hard at work on the front lines. The fire is actually right next to the sanctuary that is run by true animal lovers, people who really believe in animal rights, who have rescued farm animals, who are rescuing wild animals. They are helping support efforts to fight the fire, to give shelter to animals who have survived it, and to give food and water to wild animals who are nearby, who are suffering with their habitat already having been destroyed. So I'm going to put more information on them below. This sanctuary is named after mine and my son's favorite food, which is peanut butter. Now, big picture. As tragic and destructive as these fires have been, they are just the beginning. The more the earth heats up, the more we're going to be seeing more and more ferocious wildfires unfolding around the world. And the only way we're going to deal with this isn't with band-aid solutions, isn't by running to put out the fires one by one, although that's obviously necessary. It's by turning down the temperature on the planet. It's by dealing with the climate emergency head on. So how do we do that? Now, I know my audience, I know many of you are already vegan, so you're probably already aware that the #1 thing you can do to reduce your impact on the planet is to leave dead animals off your plate. Oh, sorry, that's not accurate. That's the #2 thing you can do. The #1 thing is to have fewer kids or not have kids, although the difference is that to have or not have kids is not a decision you make every single day, unless you get extremely lucky, in which case, congratulations and please use birth control. Whereas to kill or not kill animals for food is a decision you make 3 times a day. But if you think veganism is going to solve all the world's problems, I have some news for you. Veganism is not enough. Now, it's true that animal agriculture is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than every car, truck, plane, and ship in the world combined, approximately 15%. You see different estimates in different places, but I'm going to go with the one from the Game Changers because the Game Changers was quadruple fact checked, but that still leaves 85% of emissions that do not come from animal agriculture. Now, to be clear, if the world did go vegan, it would be an instant miracle for life on Earth. It would be fantastic. Not only would billions of animals not suffer and die every year, but 75% of all the space being taken up by the human race, which is being used for animal agriculture, would be allowed to regenerate into wilderness. As it regenerates, it would remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, help pull us back from the brink of climate disaster and mass extinction. Amazing. But wilderness takes years and decades to grow back. That's not quick enough when we're already in a disaster right now, as Australia illustrates. Now, the short answer to that question is politics. What does that mean practically? Well, the biggest issue this year is, of course, the United States presidential, congressional, and Senate elections. For the last 4 years, the United States has had a conspiracy theorist in the White House complete scientific ignoramus who thinks all of climate change is a hoax. And more important than what he thinks, he's had extremely destructive and murderous policies via the US government that have undoubtedly caused mass extinction, mass suffering to increase, in addition to dozens of ways that Trump has directly tortured and killed animals through his policies, which are fully explained in this article. Now, I doubt I have many viewers who are so ignorant that they still support Donald Trump for any reason, but the issue I think that a lot of my viewers have is that they want Bernie Sanders to be the nominee, and they're anti-Joe Biden, just like they're anti-Clinton, and we might face another unnatural disaster in November if Joe Biden does turn out to be the nominee and not enough people turn out. Now, just to be clear, I'd rather see Bernie Sanders in the White House of all the major candidates. But there's a very good chance he won't be the nominee. He very well could be, but there's a very good chance that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. So I just want to clarify, set the record straight, that the difference between President Trump and President Biden, and we have a solid record of both to see this when Biden was a senator, when Biden was vice president, and when Trump was president, is a mass extinction of a difference. Literally tens of millions of animals' lives are on the line this election, possibly hundreds of millions, and entire species could go extinct. I'm not going to get into the details. It's all explained in this article. There's a fundamental difference between Republicans and Democrats on these policies, and vegans need to wake the fuck up to that. They need to get active. They need to stop burning their votes with the Green Party because animals are dying now. You need to stop burning your votes with the so-called Humane Party. If you live in a battleground state, you need to support the Democrats because hundreds of millions of lives are on the line. No, the Democrats aren't perfect, and guess what? Vegan food's not perfect. Just like vegan food still kills animals by the harvesting process, killing mice, killing birds, killing reptiles, just like vegan food still kills animals because it's wrapped in plastic, which goes into the oceans, just like vegan food still kills animals because it's transported using fossil fuels. It's not perfect. It's astronomically better than animal foods. Just like that's the case, the Democratic Party is astronomically better than the Republican Party. Now, we shouldn't settle for them, just like we shouldn't settle for plastic wrap on all of our vegan food, just like we shouldn't settle for companies that don't want to change to zero emissions. We should push the entire vegan industry to shift to plastic free. We should push the Democrats to be better for animals. More on that in this speech. But the vegan population in the United States is only 6%. We're not going to choose the president by ourselves, but we could be the deciding factor that tips it either way when that 6% represents 20 million people, many of whom live in key battleground states that were decided by just a few thousand votes in 2016. Now, aside from the big picture presidential politics, you don't need to wait for an election to make a difference. And of course, many of us don't live in the United States. You could be pressuring your own government to take action if you live in the US, especially if you live in a state like California, New York, that's run by Democrats. You have a massive opportunity to make positive change on the climate crisis. So what should we be focused on? Of that 85% of emissions that doesn't come from animal agriculture, most of that is coming from electricity generation and transportation. Now, the bigger slice that is actually electricity generation, but I would actually argue we should focus on eliminating fossil fuels entirely from cars, trucks, buses, and planes from transportation first. And here's my reasoning. Whereas a ton of carbon dioxide is going to cause the same damage to the atmosphere regardless of whether it comes out of a tailpipe or a smokestack, although it should be noted that coal, smokestacks, and diesel engines have the most cancerous toxic fumes coming out of them, so there's an argument that we should be shutting down coal and diesel fuel first. But like I was saying, whereas a ton of greenhouse gases is going to cause the same damage no matter the source, the issue here is money. What do I mean by that? Dealing with the climate emergency isn't going to be free. We need to build massive amounts of renewable energy. Conservation will help, reducing our electricity consumption will help, but people are not going to stop using electricity. We need to source it from things that don't burn fossil fuels. Same issue with electric vehicles. We need to be replacing the world's transportation fleet, the current fleet that burns toxic fossil fuels, with zero emissions vehicles. And now all the people who are about to say, oh, but there's a problem with solar power, there's a problem with wind power, there's a problem with lithium batteries. Sure there is. And like I said, there's a problem with vegan food too. Vegan food isn't perfect compared to the alternative. Animal agriculture has all the problems of vegan food, but much, much, much worse. Yes, there is issues with renewable energy and with electric cars, but you're comparing them to the apocalypse, to fossil fuels. So let's set that straight. But what did I mean when I said the issue is money? Because we need money to deal with these things, and because people don't like having their taxes raised, and it's going to be difficult to pull money out of the budget from other places. I'd love if the world would reduce their military spending to deal with the climate emergency. Is that going to happen? I don't know. I hope it happens. We should be pushing for that too. But one way we could save billions of dollars, which we could then use to the climate crisis, is by reducing healthcare expenses. What do I mean by that? I live in a country, Canada, with only about the population of California, 30-something million people. And in this country, 21,000 people die from air pollution every year. And that costs about $8 billion in healthcare. Now, because most people live in the cities, and most of the air pollution that's killing us in the cities is coming out of these tailpipes of cars and trucks that we are involuntarily inhaling right now, eliminating toxic pollution from the cities where people live is not only going to save an enormous amount of lives, it's going to save an enormous amount of money in healthcare costs, which we can then turn and use to benefit renewable energy, to retrofit homes so they use less energy, etc. So the bottom line is we need to be specifically pushing our governments to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies, which most countries still have, and take that money and put it into zero emissions vehicles. Because electric cars are already here. They're already superior to toxic fueled vehicles in that they drive better. They cost so much less to operate because electricity is way cheaper than gas, because they break down less often. The issue is that they're just too expensive now for most of the population to afford. If we can make electric cars affordable to the majority of people, then we can very, very, very soon, as in the next couple of years, we can outlaw the sale of toxic fueled vehicles and make 100% of new vehicles electric, and then we'll gradually eliminate all the toxic fuel vehicles on the road. If that sounds crazy, that sounds like a dream, just take note that in Norway, 60% of new cars already are zero emissions. And Norway didn't have to make an enormous effort to do that. Okay? The government put a modest effort into it, and they're already almost 100% new cars being electric. Now, beyond pushing for government action on these fronts, many of us go to universities, have employers or are members of churches or synagogues or whatever that have investment funds or have retirement funds. In most cases, you know, if you're a teacher or whatever, you're in a union, you probably have a retirement fund, and your retirement fund is probably invested in the destruction of the earth through fossil fuels. So there's a global divestment movement modeled after the anti-apartheid divestment movement, pushing for all investment funds to eliminate investment in fossil fuels. So we need to all be supporting that. That's again something you don't need to wait for an election to accomplish that, just like you don't need to wait for an election to call up your member of Congress, your member of parliament, and demand action right now. I'm so fucking sick of targets in 2050. Who fucking cares? There will be nothing left in 2050 if we don't deal with this right now. We need action immediately. Now I want some of your ideas. Please let me know what are some of your ideas and how we can immediately make a difference on a climate emergency beyond just promoting the game changers and veganism, etc., which are extremely good uses of our time and which are very effective. But there's a lot of other things we need to be doing. If you're watching this on Instagram and you're having trouble sharing an IGTV video, just send me a direct message and I'll email it to you if you'd like to share it. Thank you so much for your time, and please share your ideas, man. I'm not a guru, I'm not a know-it-all. We all need to be putting our brains together on this because the survival of life on Earth is literally at stake. Thank you very much.